Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 8th meeting of Walpole Select Board. It's after 7 o'clock, the posted time of the meeting, so I call the meeting to order. Let's stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So before we dive into our agenda this evening, I wanted to just take a minute. We had one of our 300th events over the weekend, a wonderful parade, and I wanted to take a minute to acknowledge that. And we've got our co-chairs of the 300th committee here with us today, Bill Buckley and Katie Turco. And I asked them if they would be willing to come and just talk a little bit about the event, the parade, and mention whatever they feel like saying. So Bill and Katie, if I could ask you guys to come on up and just step us through what I think was really a great day for Walpole and a wonderful event. And thank both of you for the work you've been doing, not only on this event, but on all of the events that have been happening throughout the year. So welcome.
So next year, when we do it, we'll be
I
better.
resign.
I don't blame you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think we just, as we've been trying to do for the last 48 hours, there's just so many people to thank, from the Recreation Committee, led by Joe Grant, who basically put his entire life on hold for 2 weeks to organize. We had the lineup of the parade all over the run house, on all of his tables and things of that nature. Jeff Hutnick, who's the chair of the Recreation Committee, who was directing traffic and getting people out onto the road at the time. It was a 2-year planning operation. Lieutenant White and Lieutenant Becker. Lieutenant White met with us, two and a half years ago to talk about the route then, and he was instrumental in the two of them in gathering all of the needed additional details to make sure that everyone was safe on the road, as well as Chief Barry, Deputy Chief Hover, and Brian Shrella, his last name. And we're great in trying to get us additional pieces of apparatus for other communities. Every member of the 300th committee was along the route somewhere, whether they were in a folding chair telling us where the gaps were, or whether they were corralling horses in the Aggie. The Norfolk County Agricultural High School was phenomenal to us. They gave us run of the place the day before their largest event of the year, which was wonderful. We had some great support there as well from their superintendent, John Martin, and Principal Van Rotz. They also put a huge contingent of their own in, and I think John Lee was with them as well with his farm all together, which was great to see, as they were 50 years ago. Obviously, your staff here at Town Hall, from Patrick and Jim and Aoife, helping us process invoices, make sure all the bands were paid. We had checks with them on the day of, making sure all the permits. The town engineering department had to quickly process a MassDOT closure application, which was an adventure. Carl put a lot of time into doing that, again, over and above, outside of your normal duties. And Lauren as well at the recreation department, who helped facilitate all the great food trucks that were downtown, and really created a wonderful atmosphere of so many people being down there. The DPW was out at 4 a.m. putting barrels and making sure spaces were blocked off as well, so everyone could get there safely, and just the many community groups that showed up in full force, as well as yourselves marching with us. It was just a wonderful time for everybody, I think. Especially, we heard from a number of old-timers who insisted they were in the exact spot they were 50 years ago. And we hope a number of the younger kids, especially, who were at the top of Gould or Gill or at the bottom of Kendall, will be there again 25 years or 50 years hence as well. So, okay.
I really think the biggest thing that resonates with me was, I always say Walpole's not a town, it's a community. And that was so true on Saturday. And planning the parade from start to finish, everybody helped. I hate to name names because we're going to forget people. Just everyone stepped up, everyone put their full effort in, and it really showed. And everyone was happy. It was a great day. So thank you to everyone that was involved, because it wasn't Bill and I that made it a success. It was the community that made it a success.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. And you two were leading the charge on the board and so forth. I did note that both of you were up to your eyeballs in stuff on the day of the parade, and I appreciate that. These are complicated things to put together, and you had multiple entry points and having people in units getting in here and there and everywhere, and who's going to go behind the horses and all that kind of stuff, right? And so it was really a very, very well run event, and the weather cooperated, the crowd was big, everybody was happy. It was just a
We
great
even
day.
got a rainbow.
Yes, we
so.
did. Yeah. So it was great, but I just wanted to give you a chance to come in and talk about it a little bit. Let me just open it up for comments from the board.
Yeah,
Glenn?
I'll add my effusive thanks to you and all the volunteers for this kind of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to celebrate Walpole. From the perspective of my neighbors who have kind of an expectation of what a parade in Walpole is like, and they came to this parade with some good expectations of having a good time, and then were just like blown away with the level, the extra level that you took it to. I got that kind of feedback from not one person, but from many, many people in my street, at my work, my colleagues, and just throughout town. So I noticed it, other people noticed it, and you did a great job, so thank you.
Other comments?
Yes, you really delivered on the likes of which Walpole had never seen tagline, and that was excellent. So I won't repeat everything that Joe and Glenn have said, but really, truly, it was excellent.
Yeah, congratulations, great work. I've only heard just wonderful things from every member of the community that was able to go and attend, and it was a lot of fun. It was a fun day.
We're very grateful, and I think it was sort of electric. I for about 5 minutes, I took a run down to the top of Gould and was kind of checking in with my neighbors, and every single person said, "This is not what I expected. This is way more. This was what we expected." It's like
you knew.
one thing to be on a spreadsheet.
We've
it's
been
another
telling
thing.
you.
It's gonna be big.
You delivered.
So I just think that was a great thing, and especially for the younger members of our community. There's not a lot of places you could go around here where you see that many live bands and marchers from all over the place. So I think that they had a great time as well, which is most important.
Well, hopefully 50 years from now, those younger
25?
people or 25 years from now, those younger people will be able to appreciate whatever the next event is. But again, thank you. You guys are awesome. Your team is awesome, and everyone who you've named, I won't try and repeat that, but it's just an amazing event and very, very well timed.
That's the key, seriously. Thank you to everyone who helped, because there were so many people.
Really good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. Okay, so our first order of business on our agenda tonight is a public hearing and vote request of the Walpole Sportsman's Association for an all-alcoholic beverage club license and pool table at 499 Lincoln Road. So let me tell you how this is going to work out. So we have a public hearing that we're going to open in a minute. In that public hearing, we're going to have a discussion about a request that came from a couple of the abutters today to continue the hearing for 30 days so that further due diligence can be done. And we want to have some discussion about that. We're going to settle that piece of business before we start taking any input from the public. If we decide to continue, we'll stop tonight and just pick up again at the point of continuance. If we decide to not continue, then we'll take the hearing through to its conclusion tonight and conduct the businesses before the board. So can I have a motion to open the public hearing, please?
Motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
4-0. We're now in a public hearing. So as I said, our first order of business within the hearing is to discuss the nature of the continuance request. So let me tell you how I'm going to think about this as I ask both groups to give us some input here. So I'm going to ask the abutters to come and tell us, what the point of the continuance request is. And the big question in my mind is what's going to be different 30 days from now, which is the continuance request period. What do we know today that we're not going to know, or what are we going to know then in the future what we don't know today? I want to understand that. And then from the Sportsman's Club perspective, I'm going to want to ask, what are the implications of a 30-day continuance? So let's work ourselves through that first, and then depending on where we land on that, we'll see if we continue with the hearing tonight or push it out. So why don't we start with the continuance request coming from the abutters. So who would like to speak on behalf of please come up and introduce yourself, and thank you.
Evening to the chair and the rest of the board. Thank you for hearing us this evening. I do represent, my name is Jeff Eugenio, first off. I'm an attorney at Gellerman and Cabral in Norwood, and I represent Phil LaCivita, who is the personal representative of the estate of Walter LaCivita, we'll call them the estate, and the South Fork Realty Trust. The trust and the estate both own separate properties that both abut the Sportsman's Association's property. It sounds like the board has received my correspondence today. Thank you for looking at it. Just as a quick recap, the only vehicular access to the club is across the estate's property. They have title to that property, and in our view, the Sportsman's use of that access over the 80 years essentially has been permissive, but it's our client's property. Real quick detour to the planning board decision from May. My clients are under agreement with Walsh Brothers Building Company to sell this property to build a subdivision. Subdivision was approved by the planning board in May unanimously. Walpole Sportsman Association appealed that into land court. They also brought claims against our clients as to the access road. In short, we say this use has been permissive over the years. They say the use is more than permissive, that they have a greater right to use that road. We have been engaged in serious negotiations between all the parties, our clients, Walsh Brothers, and the Sportsman's Club through council since July. In short, we are close to an agreement on essentially not only the subdivision portion, but the access road piece potentially. But our issue today, and why we requested the continuance of the board, was our clients just got notice of this last Wednesday. We don't know the scope of the license, what's planned, et cetera. We don't know anything. We've requested the application, but we don't yet have it. We're just concerned, as any property owner would be. We're not just abutters. The estate does own the underlying land for the access way. Opens up all kinds of concerns, of course, about alcohol consumption, driving. We just need a little more information at this point. So we're asking for the 30-day continuance, to learn more about the application, and in the meantime, the parties may settle this thing. We've all been working hard towards it, and that might settle the access road issue altogether. If that happens, our clients will sell the property and be gone, essentially. So we're just asking for some time for the board. I don't think it's a great, I don't think it's prejudicial to the club or to any other parties. I'm happy to entertain questions from the board.
Good. Well, thank you for that recap, and it's very, very helpful. So first question in my mind is the access that's been in place for 80 years. So is there an easement in place here?
There is not.
There is no easement, okay.
There's an allegation that it's essentially an easement by prescription, but the court has not decided that, and we maintain that it's been permissive. Not to get too down the details there, but no, essentially there's no deeded easement, no.
If the Sportsman's Club were not able to access the Sportsman's Club property in the way they've been doing for the last 80 years, my understanding is that would make it hard for them to access the property because it's landlocked. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay. The other thing is, it's not our purview as a board to discuss access and easements and things like that.
Absolutely.
There are other boards that deal with those kinds of things. What we're here to talk about tonight is a few requests from the Sportsman's Club for an all-alcoholic beverage club license, the common victualers license, and the pool table license.
Sure.
Those fall under the purview of the Board of Selectmen. So in my mind, I don't see a connection necessarily between the access question and these license questions that are in front of us today. So I want to be clear on that point and make sure that we keep the, where our authority is and what business is in front of us, what that is all about, and how we need to think about it, and keep that separate from other things that may be going on. The reason for asking the questions about the easement is I wanted to make sure I understood what the underlying question really was. And so from your perspective, there is no easement. This is an agreement that's been in place for some period of time. And it sounds like there's some discussion to resolve the access that, is of course beyond the bounds of what we're going to talk about tonight, but helpful to know.
Right.
All true?
All true.
Okay.
I just like to add, I just think that the connection is, until such time as the situation on the ground changes, that access would be across the estate's property. And in that sense, the estate is unique, and it's not just a normal abutter. We have underlying land here that's at issue, and that's the substantive reason why, in terms of the application, what's being proposed, we just would ask for some time to examine it. That's all.
Okay. Let me open up for questions from the board, other board members.
I guess my initial reaction is, at this time, the applicant does have access to their property. They can go and would be able to use an all-alcoholic beverage license. They would be able to use the pool table and the TVs, and if at some point in time, this litigation was settled and they couldn't do those things, then that might be a different conversation. But at this time, they can, and I don't really want to get involved in potential litigation or active litigation that really doesn't have anything to do with this, because at this time, these licenses would be utilized in the way they're intended, safely and responsibly and actively. You know, we wouldn't want a license that was just sitting there and nobody could get, you know, they could only go look at the property and they couldn't actually access the property. That's not happening right now. That could change, but the question we have today is really, you know, that it's mute. I mean, it's mute to us, not mute to you, and perhaps not to the applicant, but to this conversation, I just don't see the relevance. So that's my initial thought,
Okay.
and I'd like to hear what other people say. But
Okay, other members of the board, questions for Valerie?
You know, I mean, thank you for the update. I think that explains the letter that we received. You know, I do kind of somewhat agree with Glenn, though, too, that, and as you said, Jim, our job is not to look at these easements and things like that. We're talking about the licenses for the entertainment licenses, et cetera, so.
Okay, anything else that you want to say before we go to the Sportsman's Club side of the equation?
No, that's all, thanks.
Okay, great, thank you, that was very helpful. So who's here on behalf of the Sportsman's Club? Okay, why don't you come up and... Hey, Jeff. So why don't we do, since three of you, let's do intros here.
Chris Russo, the Vice President of Walpole Sportsman Association. Sean Hanley, the Secretary of the Association.
Hi, Sean.
And soon to be manager of the club license, if we get that. Jeff Fisher, treasurer. So,
Okay.
we didn't bring representation tonight, so we're not here to discuss access, you know, easement.
No, and
anything
nor are
like
we,
that.
nor are we.
We're here
Yeah.
to discuss the permit. The reason we're requesting the permit, because we do multiple one-day liquor licenses today. A lot of our events, we just had a pig roast, 200-plus members that, and the public that were there. We have charity events that we did. We did a Wing King that was for muscular dystrophy that we did back in August. Another one-day liquor license. We pull one-day liquor liability policies for each one of these events too. The feeling of the club is we should just get licensed. So that's what we're here for.
So, question to you. If the select board were to agree to a continuance of some amount, what would would a 30-day continuance, does that present any big issue to the Sportsman's Club?
So it's tough to gauge, and I'd probably need Aoife that knows the timelines a little bit better to help out with this, but we have events that are planned. We have a kids' Christmas party. We have an adult Christmas party in December. My understanding is that while we're in the phase of applying for the license, we can no longer apply for one-day liquor licenses. So without that ability, we wouldn't be able to have these events. We have events coming up in the spring as well. It's my understanding that this is the busy time of year, October, November, December, with renewals. We're just afraid we'd get delayed and not be able to host events that we host annually.
So, Aoife, maybe you can help me with this. If we were to approve the license tonight, does that mean that the Sportsman's Club can immediately start using it, or does it have to go through another step?
No, so this is just the first step tonight. So if the board agrees to approve this, the paperwork is submitted to the state tomorrow, and then they assign an investigator to conduct their own, research on the application, make sure everything that they are required to hold, that they hold, and then it's issued from the state. Just from past experience, it's usually 3 months in order from start to finish. And like Jeff mentioned, that is correct. They would not be able to obtain any one-days while their license application is pending. So,
And so, knowing that, so you've already submitted the license application,
The
so
license application,
you're already
paid
in the
fee.
spot where you can't do the one day, so that's not
I,
something.
I think it's once it's submitted to the state, I can't do the one day
Yes,
anymore.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, okay.
But again, we push out 30 days, it's just gonna delay it down.
I agree, but in my head, I'm trying to think, okay, you mentioned Christmas, for example. Well, it doesn't feel like you're gonna, in any event, be able to do this for Christmas.
Right.
So it sort of doesn't really matter. I agree, pushing it out 30 days means another 30 days on the back end, that's obvious. But I'm trying to think about, from the Sportsman's Club point of view, what the real impacts are here.
Yeah. I mean,
As
from
we-
our standpoint, and, I mean, the land discussion, that negotiations ongoing has nothing to do with what we're trying to do
I agree.
relative to the license.
I agree, and it's totally separate from what we're here to talk about. Unfortunately, it's also just part of a bigger picture thing that I think we need to be thinking through. I'm trying to get to the right decision here, and so that's why we want to have some of this other dialogue. Could I ask the attorney for the abutters to come back up for a second? So now, having heard your perspective, the Sportsman's Club perspective, the one thing I still haven't heard is, what do we think, and I'd really like you to get crystal clear with me on this one, but, so we know some things today, and again, the request that's in front of the board is an alcoholic beverage club license and a pool table license. The other piece really isn't part of this public hearing. So if I think about those two things and what we know about those today, what are we gonna know that is different 30 days from now?
My clients have not seen the application yet. They haven't had a chance to discuss it with their family members. They just received notice of it last week. We are hoping to have discussions with the club through council, like we have been, as to what their plans are. How they're going to use the property differently than it's been used before. Those sorts of things. We're just learning about it. We thought the notice period was a little bit short, that we received notice. And again, I just want to emphasize that I'm not asking the board to delve into the property rights issues here.
And we won't.
But I think it is clear that they do access their property through ours, and for that reason, I think to give my clients more time to examine what is planned here would not hurt them in 30 days. If we had, we might well come back after 30 days and agree with the idea of the license, feel more comfortable with it. We just don't know enough information now. You have alcohol and weapons and exiting on my client's property at the public street, or on Lincoln Road. These are concerns, and I think a 30-day continuance isn't too much to ask.
Let me throw an alternative scenario out. What if because one of the things that I've looked at is our board meeting schedule.
Sure.
So our next meeting is 2 weeks from now.
Okay.
The one that follows that is 3 weeks after that.
Sure.
So, 7 weeks out, 5 weeks out, I'm sorry. And so to think in terms of 30 days would be, beyond that by a number of days.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to agree, and we have not discussed this as a board, so we will have to do that, but let me just throw the idea out and then we'll hear input from the board. If we agreed to a 2-week continuance so that we could move the process more quickly, as we've heard from the Sportsman's Club, but also then fit within, our schedule more readily.
Sure.
Does 2 weeks give you enough time to work through some of the questions that you have raised here today?
I think it can, yes.
And is there anything, what I don't want to do is come back in 2 weeks and have yet another request for.
Right. Understood.
I want to get to the end of this. It's only fair. This request is appropriately in front of the Board of Selectmen. They have followed proper process. I know you mentioned something about the notice period, but it's my understanding that the procedure and process was followed properly. Abutters were notified, and that can be demonstrated.
Sure.
We put the ad in the paper, that can be demonstrated. And so my view is that this request is in fact appropriately in front of the board. And to some extent, I feel as though because it has been put correctly in front of us, we should deal with it tonight. That said, I've heard what you've had to say as well, and I'm wondering if a couple weeks might make a difference. So that was me just sort of working through my own thought process. What I like to do now is hear from the board and see what the board thinks. So others. Glenn?
Yeah, so I mean, just a question actually, for Aoife perhaps, to remind me, this get renewed once a year, every 12 months, the liquor licenses specifically? And is that usually done at a public hearing or as a batch? Unless do we have the option of having a public hearing?
We don't generally have a public hearing for them. Usually it's just an item on the agenda,
Right.
usually the end of November, the beginning of December, for the board to vote on renewing everything. However, at that time, if there was an issue that we had with a license holder, we could definitely
Separate this one.
separate that and have something more formal.
Sure,
That
okay.
option is there.
Yeah, I was just wanted to remind myself, so every 12 months, we reconsider all the licenses throughout the
next
town?
year.
Yeah, okay. This is a question, that's all.
Okay, Ben?
So I guess one question, you had mentioned that they're driving across this property and obviously they're serving alcohol. It's a alcohol license that we are considering tonight, but none of that is new. They've been doing that multiple times a year for multiple years. So I'm just, again, trying to understand what is different about this that is cause for pause for everybody. Seems to me, it's literally the same thing that they've been doing multiple times per year for many years.
I think the question goes to expanding the scope of what's been issued in the past, a series of one-day licenses, and this is an all-alcohol license that would be granted here. It goes to part of our questions about what's the planned use. I mean, in terms of commercial operation, do they plan on operating it 7 days a week? These are all just, basic questions that anyone would have if, they're next door to a place that's being permitted for an all-alcohol license. I think it's, again, a reasonable request just to ask such questions. I mean, the scope of would be granted here is far and above a one-day license. And in that sense, I think the 2 weeks, which the chair suggested, would be ample time for us to investigate, hopefully have a conversation with the club, certainly look at the application and talk with our clients who are both family members, constitute both the estate and the trust.
Yeah, I also want to emphasize that, again, what Jim said, because I think it's worthwhile, solely because you had mentioned that there was short notice, that all the notice has been given, as we understand it, appropriately.
I understand.
So why this is all of a sudden this past Wednesday becoming an issue is not clear either. And apparently there's not really an answer for that. Unless you do have an answer for that.
I don't have an answer. I do know my clients notified me that they received notice last Wednesday. I'm not, as far as I know, all the procedures were done properly. I'm not alleging anything different.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, okay.
Ally?
Like I said, we mentioned we were here, simply to talk about the licenses and the easements. I understand that as butters, you'd want more questions, may have questions and have answers. But if all procedures were followed and it has been an appropriate time frame, I do kind of pause on that as well. Because this club has been operating for 80 years, so it's not something new. It's not a new establishment that's coming forward us. They have a long history of operating here. As far as I know, a responsible history. I mean, that hasn't been brought up because we are talking about licenses. Is there anything that has been filed? So this is a long-standing history of one-day licenses that have frequently been provided to the club. So I guess I'm comfortable moving forward. I'm comfortable if we want to do our diligence and give them 2 weeks.
So, I mean, if I could just add one more comment. So I think we could go either way. I do see the applicants and the neighbors are here, Mr. LaCivita or Mr. Hassenjager. So if they were comfortable standing up and speaking, it is a public hearing, it's their right to do so. If it turns out they want to, I guess, consult with their family and their other, sort of interested parties, then I understand that too. So I feel like we could move forward today, but maybe your suggestion, out of respect for the interested, abutters, we could also wait 2 weeks. It seems like a reasonable compromise. So it could go either way. It doesn't sound like, maybe they want to speak, or maybe you're not prepared to speak, and that's okay.
Well, I'd also, if we're going to continue, I'd prefer not to get into the public hearing discussion, because there will be further discussion on the merits of the actual request.
Right, it'll be one of the
What I'm trying to deal with right now is the continuation question, okay? Jeff, do you guys, would you be, does a 2-week continuance, is that something that you could work with?
I guess we could, but, I mean, we're here. You know, we sent these notices certified mail on the 26th. They were both delivered on the 28th. You know, that's 10 days' notice. Plenty of time to dive into what the scope of this is. The scope is operating business as normal for us. This is a club license, not a commercial license. So that's where we're at.
And everything you just said is true, and that's, you know, and we've acknowledged that you have followed proper process, and this business is appropriately in front of the board tonight.
I mean, access to the club, it's not even a discussion at this point in time. We've been accessing this since 1947.
Well, and again, it's not something that is relevant in terms of our work here. It may be relevant in other venues, but it's not relevant here.
I mean, from a club's position, we followed the application process, we notified the abutters on time, and we're here, so.
And I would say, thanks, Jeff, you can sit down. I would also say that I understand, John, you were into the office yesterday and you were given a copy of the application. Is that true?
Yeah, I pursued a copy. The trustee received the notice Saturday, not the 30th. I think the thing you're missing, Ms. Hamilton, is that there was a new drinking facility built within the last 2 years. It wasn't 80 years ago. It's brand new. So that is a significant change. And I don't, I would articulate for the lascivious concern that that is a huge change in their liability and their good-heartedness to provide access to the Sportsman's Club over their property. And they've worked, I've observed from the outside, they worked diligently to try to work in a scenario where the land could ultimately be turned over to the club, where they would own a proper legal way, which is what they should have to have a liquor license of any type. And the lascivious have for 10 years worked to try to resolve this with the club. During that time, 3 of them passed away. Walter and the 2 sisters. Philip is left. A 2-week extension allows them to further try to satisfy the community and the Sportsman Club in an amicable Walpole-type way that we were just talking about on Walpole Day. In the spirit of good Walpoleites working together, you should give them the 2 weeks. I think the South Fork Trust definitely needs the 2 weeks. And it's better to do it this way than do it in another forum in a very awkward way. But I don't think, quite frankly, to be honest, I don't think any independent person outside of Walpole that would look at this scenario would say it's proper for to issue a license over someone's property for a liquor establishment in the back of the property.
So just to be clear, that's not the question. The question is,
But that's the environment.
it may be,
And
but
I
it's not,
appreciate your, I
it's
think,
not the
what I'm
question.
saying is, it's a de minimis offer that you have made, which I think is a very, very reasonable one, to keep things amicable.
So-
You don't have to honor it,
thanks.
but
So thank
I
you.
would,
So thank you, John. I just wanted to get into the record that you did actually receive a copy of the application. That was the bottom line, which you did.
but I'm
So-
not principal. I was just a citizen.
Okay,
FYI, at the end.
okay. Thank you, John. All right, Jeff, we're gonna have to keep it short, Jeff. We need to move on, so.
So, I mean, just to address the comment, we're not a drinking facility, we're a sportsman's club. We do trap, skeet, 5-stand, clays. We just sponsored the state sporting clays shoot 2 weekends ago. Very successful event. I mean, very prestigious to be even invited to do that, okay? We have a youth shooting team that does trap, skeet. They were out at nationals last year, okay? We have a combat pistol league. We rent our facilities for organizations. We rent our facilities for, private use. We're not a drinking facility. We are a club, okay, that we cater to the community, so.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the discussion on the continuation part right now. If we vote to continue, I will stop the whole meeting until the continuation date. If we vote not to continue, then we'll have further discussion in the public hearing. So that's the way I'd like to go. A couple thoughts from me. Number one, I want to reiterate that this request is properly before the board. And Jeff, you and your team have done everything that you needed to do. And in my view, this is something that the board could take action on tonight, given that you have followed proper process. That said, there's enough noise here that I think a 2-week continuance might be worth it for both parties to work through that noise that actually has nothing to do with the request that's in front of us. So my own sense is that if both parties agree that in 2 weeks you can get that worked out, then let's come on back. If we do agree to do that, my expectation is that we will actually have it worked out. So I don't want to again hear, we need another 2 weeks when you come back in 2 weeks, if we decide to get on that route. Everyone clear on at least where I stand on this? Okay. Others?
No, you said it well. I'm okay continuing. I mean, I think we could actually finish it tonight, but I think out of respect for the abutters and the concerns, continuation is a reasonable request, and 2 weeks is probably okay. So,
Ally?
Yeah, as I mentioned, like Glenn said, I'm okay with either, but 2 weeks is fine with me.
Okay. All right, so I think you got my message, right? 2 weeks. Okay. Ally?
Motion to continue the public hearing until October 22nd.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
4-0. We will continue this discussion in 2 weeks. Thank you.
And then Jim, with no further discussion, we're going to pause on the other one, right?
Yeah, we're finished with the business tonight. We've just voted to continue, so we can't have any further discussion tonight.
Yeah.
We're gonna leave it open, and we will just simply pick it up as a continuation in 2 weeks, okay? All right, that was fun. All right, next up, we have some board and committee appointments. So we have 3 candidates that are applying for constable. We have 1 position. So we have Harry Brusades Jr., Brian Leary, and Barry Garin, all applying for constable. What I'd like to do is have each one of you come up and introduce yourself and explain why you'd like to be constable or appointed constable, and tell us what your qualifications are, and then we will pick it up and decide as a board from there. So, Harry, since you're first on the list, why don't you go first?
Thank you for the opportunity. So I did see the position was open probably earlier this year, and I didn't give it a lot of thought, but a friend of mine is a constable in Framingham, and I talked a little bit more with him about it and the details of the position and what it means to the community, and I started to gain a little bit more interest, and then I reached out and found out what the process was. I guess I will start by just talking about my work history and experience and how that would facilitate the position. You know, I've been a loan officer for 30 years at North Star Mortgage, one company, for that whole time. And it does mean that I have extensive collaboration with landlords and tenants and attorneys. And I've been involved with a lot of the different situations when tenants have to be, let go from a certain building for different circumstances. And I've been able to work with all those parties to find a good solution. Also, I'm a financial representative with the Bullfinch Group for about 15 years. And in that role, I deal with a lot of detailed and confidential documentation, reviewing, collecting, and making sure that that stuff remains where it's supposed to be, and that's confidential. As far as my community work, I've been a Walpole resident for, I think, just over 25 years now. I became an RTM in Precinct 8, I want to say around 2014. Served 2 terms there, moved to Precinct 5, and I think I'm on my 2nd term for Precinct 5. Joined the Walpole Chamber of Commerce, I want to say 2013, became president 2014. So I've been serving the chamber for a little over 10 years. Vice president of Destination Downtown. I've been a member of the Azure Lodge of Freemasons here locally for about 6 years, which is a charitable organization. And I just list all those things because it's just a matter of what I try to give back to the community. And I've also been a landlord on a couple multifamilies for about 28 years, and I've dealt with a lot of those situations in regard to tenant issues and going to court and trying to solve that situation. Also, did join the Walpole Sportsman Association a couple years back. Didn't renew my membership this year, but I will soon. And I've gone through some gun safety courses, and I do have my license to carry as well. I don't believe Walpole really needs the ability to have a license to carry. I think most of the situations can be solved, and I would probably not want to have to carry the gun, but if it was a prerequisite, I do have that training and license, and I would also work to continue training with security training and techniques. I guess there is some, I've read up in regard to some situations where people do actually need to be handcuffed, so to make sure that I go through that training for safety and accessibility, make it a nice process. So that's pretty much why I want to come serve the town, and I believe there could be a lot of more issues coming up with a lot more of the apartment complexes, and I believe I could handle those situations with a professional manner, dealing with people morally and ethically.
So, in all that, just if you could just in a sentence tell me, what caused you, because you were the first to apply, you actually triggered this process when you applied. What caused you to decide to apply to be a constable? What were you thinking?
Again, I was really talking to my friend who's a constable in Framingham, and he was telling me all about the position and what he does and how they work with the tenants and the landlords and corporations that need that work done. And I thought that would be a good opportunity for me to, again, serve Walpole and give back.
Okay, other questions for Harry? No? Okay, thank you, Harry.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Harry.
All right, let's go with Brian Leary next. Brian? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing me this evening.
Sure.
A little bit about myself. I grew up in Walpole, born and raised here. Currently, I live 2 doors down from where my father resides, where I grew up as a child with my family. Currently, I'm also employed as the electrical inspector in the town of Walpole. I've been here since 2013, serving at some capacity as electrical inspector. Also own my own local electrical business. For the past 18 years, I was also a police officer. I served for 14 years as a volunteer unpaid police officer in the town of Abington. In the past 4 years, up until May of this year, I was a police officer, a reserve officer with the town of Norfolk. During that time, I obviously did a lot of situations. I've recently completed the Post Academy, Post Bridge Academy, which is a 200-plus hour academy on top of the 242 hours I did in 2006. The academy training, so I do have all the defensive tactics, all the other training, and the major thing I learned during the academy, which I didn't realize I was always somewhat decent of, was the de-escalation. How to bring a situation down, how to calm everybody down to get the situation to drop a couple extra levels. I feel like this training and experience I have as a police officer would also pay off and participate towards the constable position. I heard you ask Harry the question earlier about what made you apply. What made me apply at the time, I'm friends with Kelly Murphy, so she became constable. We talked about it a little bit. At the time when she became constable, I was still employed by the town of Norfolk as a police officer. I didn't want to commingle issues at that time, so when I resigned in May, thought about it a lot, and finally dropped the paperwork off this year.
In your role as a volunteer police officer and then a reserve police officer for Norfolk, have you ever been involved in serving, I'm not gonna do the right words here, but if you were, the constable's job is to serve people notice.
Correct.
Have you ever been involved in your prior experience in serving people notice?
Numerous times. I'd be there for serving, whether it's restraining orders, custody orders, search warrants, arrest warrants. There's been numerous situations that I've had to serve people or be as accessory to serving.
Gotcha, okay. Questions from the board for Brian? Okay, thank you, appreciate it. And Barry, I don't know if I'm gonna pronounce this right. Goffrin, thank you. Please come up and tell us about yourself.
Good evening. My name is Barry Goffin. I live at 4 Freedom Way at Walpole. Like the first speaker, I had a couple of friends that were constables in Boston. I grew up in Boston, the West Roxbury section of Boston. And I started serving papers for them as a disinterested person. I have a couple other businesses that I did property management work on, and I would, bump into them and see them at different properties, and that's kind of how I got into it. And I became a Boston constable around the year 99, 2000, and I was a constable for roughly 15, 16 years in Boston. I've served every type of civil process there is. I've done evictions for Boston Housing. I was doing the arrest warrants for Department of Revenue in Boston. I was doing shutoffs for National Grid, was Boston Gas back then. And I've really done every type of civil process there is. I was, right when I became a constable in Boston, I joined the Boston Constable Association. And after a few years, I was the director of the association. And I actually ran and organized training classes for the constables at the Boston Police Academy with Captain Tim Murray and the Registrar Gary Eblin at the time. And we went through all restraint techniques, handcuffs, chemical usage, decontamination. We've been through all those classes. I myself have performed hundreds of arrests for Department of Revenue. And on a civil arrest, it's usually daytime arrest. We don't bring the prisoner to jail, we bring the prisoner right to the judge. So we usually arrest when court is in session, unless we get what's called a sunset clause. Then that allows us to bring the prisoner to the closest jail. I've worked with the police many times. I've also used the police many times during arrests, just for, to keep the peace. When I was working at the police academy, when we were doing classes at the police academy, I was actually asked to speak at a few of the cadet classes at the police academy on the interaction of police during civil matters, if they are called to keep the peace, if they are requested by a constable or a deputy sheriff to keep the peace during a civil arrest or a capious arrest. Just to speak about the rules of civil procedure when it comes to police. I haven't done this for 8 or 9 years, so I might have a little brushing up to do, but I've done it all. I did see the advertisement for a constable, and it's something I miss doing. It's something I like to do. I'm involved in many other things. I have a glass company in West Roxbury that I've had since 1981. I still have that. I'm a licensed builder. I do a few things, but I keep getting drawn back to constable work. It's just something I've always liked, and I've been a resident of Walpole now for a while, and I saw it come up, and I thought I could, keep it going and give it a try here.
Well, you're clearly very qualified, given the amount of experience you has in actually being a constable and the things that you've talked about. I guess the question that I would have is, and I don't remember who said it, someone that may have been you, said these things that the constable does are generally done during the day. I know that your business is outside of Walpole. And so one of the things that I'm thinking about is, should it be somebody who's in Walpole, all the time, who is readily available to conduct the business of the constable, or would there be some delay?
No, that's fair question.
Yeah.
I do most of my work online.
Okay.
I do a lot of my work from home. I don't have a hands-on business. I did years ago, not anymore. I sold part of the business off. I mean, we used to do auto glass. I sold that a few years ago. So as I'm downsizing there, I'm looking more, to do something that keeps me close to home, keeps me close to my kids. Like I said, it's something I've always liked to do. It's something I've done for a long time, and I just would like to get back into it again.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Thank you. You can take a seat. So here's the good news. You have three really qualified people, some of whom I know, some of whom I don't know. And so I'm pleased to see both old faces and new faces applying for these positions and becoming involved in Walpole in a deeper way. It is also nice to have three qualified candidates step forward for these types of positions. Unfortunately, we only can pick one, and so we're going to need to go and do that now based on the input that you all just gave us. I've gone back and forth on how to do this, because one way to do it would be to say, ask someone on the board to make a motion, and by the way, I'm going to let other people talk about this a little bit in a minute, but procedurally, we normally, someone would make a motion, you get a second, and then we vote it. Another way we could go would be to enter names into nomination and then show of hands kind of thing, given that there are three of you. And I haven't quite in my mind settled on what the right way to go is. I'll be looking for input from the board on this. But, and I also will tell you that I am struggling just a little bit with which one of you is the one that I would pick. As I sit here right now, I haven't settled that out in my head, and I am interested in hearing more from the members of the board. I do think having somebody who's in town all the time is a helpful thing. But I can't deny the experience that Mr. Garfin has, and, that has to weigh in here too. So before I offer any further words here, let me turn to the board for discussion. So who wants to go first? Glenn?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate some of your points, which is that, well, first of all, we have three very qualified candidates, so that is good news. It's also bad news a little bit. It's a problem because I don't want to dissuade somebody from volunteering. So two people have to go home tonight and not get the constable appointment, and we want to make sure that those two people come back and volunteer in the future for this opening, if it opens up again, or for something else. So I just want to make sure that everybody who has applied, Mr. Mercedes, Mr. Leary, Mr. Garfin, know that we appreciate your experience and we appreciate what you bring to the table. And we thank you for being here tonight and putting your name out there. And like you said, experience, being in town, being, you don't have to be a lifelong resident, but maybe living in Walpole for a longer period of time and knowing the people also helps. All those factors come into play. I want to hear what the other board members to say as well. I agree with you, it's a very difficult decision, but we will appoint somebody tonight.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Glenn. Others?
I don't have anything further to add, Jim.
Okay. Ally?
I'm just kind of reiterating, it's great that we have three candidates, the experience, albeit two candidates have kind of more close related experience being a constable and what is needed and has practiced that. I think it is a difficult decision tonight.
So, I was hoping someone would say a name, and no one did.
I know.
So I will. And let me just walk my process now. So, again, I think being in Walpole is an important aspect of this job because it may be that we need someone to move quickly in serving notice of some form. I also think that having police background is helpful here. And so when I look at the three of you, Mr. Garfam, I think you've got incredible experience, but not so much on the in-town side of the equation. I recognize you said you do the remote thing a lot. Our other two candidates have been in town and are in town. They've been here longer and they are in town all the time. Between Harry and Brian, again, you guys are nicely fitting the bill on being in town and being available. I think Brian gets the nod from me as I think it through just because of his police experience and the things that he has done in the past. So from where I'm coming from, my lean right now, and hopefully others will actually express their thought process as we go through this, but my lean would be to go with Brian Leary at this point. So others, Glenn?
And we have not discussed this, I have not discussed this with anybody else on the board, but I will agree with your nomination.
Others?
One other piece that Brian did mention, which I do appreciate hearing, is that he talked about de-escalation. And I think that is something that we are quite frequently, we hear that quite frequently from Chief Kelleher when he's talking about situations in town and the importance of someone with that experience and training of de-escalation training.
Ben?
I don't disagree.
Okay. So I'm just going to make a motion if the board agrees with me to move to appoint Brian Leary as the constable for the one position we have available.
Second that.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
4-0. I also want to thank you all for being here. And Harry, I appreciate the fact that you were the first one to apply for this and that you triggered this process, which ultimately got us a couple of more candidates, which I think was really helpful. So thank you, and appreciate you all being here. So thanks for your volunteering. Okay. What are the next steps for Brian?
So I'll get a letter out to Brian tomorrow. He'll need to get sworn in by Liz, and also in part of the swearing in, he needs to provide his bond. He needs to provide a bond to the
Okay.
town clerk.
So Brian, you heard all that?
Sorry. I apologize, I couldn't hear anything back there.
Okay, go ahead, Eva.
So I'll get a letter to you tomorrow. You need to get sworn in by Liz, but as part of your swearing in, you have to get a bond. All right? She has to put that on file.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have an interview with Mark Major for promotion to full member of the ZBA. Mark? You are currently an associate member of the ZBA and have been for some time, and so tell us about yourself and why you want to become a full member.
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you again for the opportunity. It's really just now that I've been an associate for 3 years, I did take a slight hiatus because of a overcrowding, too many associates on the board issue, but basically originally joined in 21, have now been on the board for 3 years, have got to see a lot of what it takes to be a full member of the ZBA, got lots of experience now with 40A and B, and have kind of seen kind of the gamut of cases that come before the board, and just feel much more comfortable with kind of the bylaws, the zoning, and feel like I can really kind of now step up into that next role of being a full-time member. And excited to continue to serve the town, if you all would agree.
Well, certainly, we've been appreciative of all the work you've done so far over the last 3 years, and you certainly your knowledge of the ZBA process is where it needs to be. The ZBA is one of those boards that does amazing work, and it's hard work as a judicial body of the town, and interpreting the bylaws and applying them in the correct fashion is really not an easy thing to do, especially since there are so many variations on the theme that come your way. So I appreciate your willingness to be a member and bring your good thinking to the game. So other members.
I was going to say the same thing. It's hard work and it's important work, and a lot of us will find ourselves in front of the ZBA at some point or another. So we appreciate having good minds there. So thank you.
Yeah, just say thank you as well, Mark.
Appreciate it.
So I was very pleased to see that you were coming forward as, with the opportunity to make you, appoint you as a full-time member.
Great. Well, thank
Okay.
you, and I look forward to see whoever comes in as the next associate, so we can get the pipeline going with another great member.
Thanks, Mark. Ally?
Make a motion to promote Mark Major to a full member of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
all your good work. Okay, next up, we have open forum. Is there anyone here who would like to speak at open forum?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Being none, we'll move on. So on to new business. We're going to have a discussion and vote on adding a bench dedication policy to our policies and procedures. And what has really brought this about is we've had a couple of requests recently that have come in through Jim's office, and we've decided that, in order for us to actually be able to adequately answer and be fair, I guess is the right word, that we really should have a written policy in place that says these are the circumstances under which, we think a bench dedication is warranted. The policy does have enough leeway in it so that I think we can apply good judgment and so forth, and I don't think it's overly rigid, which was one of the things that I was looking for. But before we go further into discussion, Jim, do you want to just touch on the policy briefly and any thoughts that you have?
So basically, as you said, we've had a couple of requests recently. We're just looking to formalize the process. We don't have anything in the policies and procedures, but with the help of Patrick and Aoife, we were able to find a spot that I think would fit nicely in the policies and procedures section. Basically, as the town administrator, myself serving as a park commissioner under the charter, it would have this office receiving and managing bench applications, developing the procedures for the Parks Department, working with Jim Thomas currently to figure out, where's the best place to site these benches. More or less what we do now, we do it informally. I touch base with Jim with the help of Rich in the past. He's been able to get some benches and people to donate the benches and just site them out. This would just be more or less formalizing it and memorializing it. So.
Rich, you are here, and I did want to, first of all, acknowledge that you're here, and thank you for all the work that you've done in the past to, get benches, get people to donate benches to the town. It's been an enormously helpful thing that you've done for the town. Is there anything that you would like to say about the policy?
I haven't seen the policy, so I really don't know.
Okay, all right.
That's part of the reason why I came down.
Okay. So I don't know how to respond to that. So, would you like to see the policy?
Yes.
Okay. I think it'd be worthwhile to have Rich take a look at the policy, given his close association with the process of getting benches and benches dedicated in the town. And since he's here, I think that'd be helpful. What I'd like to propose is this: could we just push this discussion off for a little bit, hand Rich the policy? Rich, you give it a read, and we'll come back around to you in about 15 minutes to see if there's anything in it that you think should be amended. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's continue. Next up, we have a discussion and vote on the creation of an MCI Walpole Advisory Board membership and charge. All right, so the genesis here is we have a prison in town. The prison has been closed for some time. The prisoners have been out since, I believe it's last July. Jim, is that true?
Year plus. It was in 23 it closed.
And all the prisoners were out like July of 2023?
Yes.
Okay. So been out for a long period of time. We've had numerous discussions with the state through our legislative delegation. We've talked directly to the Department of Corrections, and we've had conversations with the people from the various state offices. And our whole thrust on this has been, while we acknowledge that this is a state-owned facility and state-owned land, it's our view that the town of Walpole needs to have a seat at the table to help the state think through what might become of that site. This has resonated with particularly our legislative delegation, and I'm talking about people like Senator Mike Rush, John Rogers, Ted Phillips, Marcus Vaughn, and Paul McMurtry, who are 4 reps that represent the various precincts in Walpole. to the point where they have said to us, we love the fact that you are being proactive in speaking with the state as the state starts to think about, and which they haven't even done yet, by the way, future uses of the site. This is probably a multi-year thing, especially given what we've seen in some of the other site closures that have occurred, although some have moved faster. As we have had conversations with our state reps and senator, they have suggested to us that perhaps we should formalize our approach so that rather than having one-off conversations with them, that we actually put a group together, we thought of it as a working group, that would then think through what the potential uses of the site might be in a way that we might be able to proactively influence the state's thinking on how to use the site and what to do with it. My view on this is we want to end up with something there that is in the best interests of the residents of Walpole. And when I think about that, I think about town services like schools, like fire, like police, etc. And what that means to us as a town as that site, ultimately gets to its future use. So we thought it would be smart to actually put together a group that would sit down and think through, here are some things that we think would be best suited for that site from a Walpole point of view, and begin having a real discussion with the state so that our voice is actually heard. It's important that we have a seat at the table here as we think through the next use of that site. And so that would be the point of this group, to begin that conversation and to become more formal in our conversations with the state so that we can proactively influence the outcome. Is our expectation over time that the smaller working group will expand to include a larger number of people, but we've got to kind of get it up and running first? It's our expectation that we will work directly with the state on this. We have to formalize that with them as well and get that process in place, but we do have the support of the reps and the senator, and that's important to us. So with that as preamble, Jim, is there anything that you would like to say about what we've laid down as the charge and so forth?
So what you have in front of you here is something loosely based on what the town of Concord established. I've been working with their town manager and their deputy town manager. I've viewed a couple of their meetings recently. They started the process later than we did. They closed down this past, I think it was June, but they were already at the point where it's being declared as a division, a capital asset, and being surplused off. We are well behind that, despite the fact that we're a year behind. They haven't even gone to the Division of Capital Asset Management, asked to be declared as surplus. It's my understanding that they're parking some vehicles down there, and they're still keeping it open for possible use or overflow if they ever need it. Concord's way ahead in the process for us, but fortunately we were able to use some of the stuff that they had already had in place as a boilerplate. Specifically, the advisory board's charge, we used some of the info there. The membership is much different than it is in Concord. We have some department heads on there, and then we have the planning board chair or his/her designee, economic development chair, his/her designee, select board chair and vice chair. So I think it's well thought out. The select board, each individual member has reviewed it with me, given me some input, made those tweaks. So we're basically ready to go forward. Next step, if the board approves this, I'll reach out to those committees, ask for the chair or their designee to participate with us, let us know who's going to participate, and then reach out to the delegation, probably starting with Senator Rush's office, because they've been the primary point of contact, asking them, how can we set up the first meeting? Probably have town council in on the first meeting, explain, or maybe the second. What's the current zoning? What can we do with this? Have someone from the state, if they're willing and able to come in or at least Zoom in with us, what's the initial plans for the site? Maybe eventually talk to someone from DCAM and talk about that process. And a lot of, I think, fact-finding for this committee initially, and I think it'll pay off a year or two down the road if and when something becomes of that site.
Great, thanks. Any questions for Jim or other comments as we discuss this?
No, I think it's timely and needed. Yep.
Anyone else?
Yep, having been sat on these discussions, it's unfortunate that it's still just a mothball and, no progress has been made on that. So hopefully this will help initiate that.
Good. Yeah, so to your point, Ally, this is a discussion that we've been involved with since they announced the closure of the prison. They haven't made any progress at all in terms of future use. It's still under the control of Department of Corrections. As Jim pointed out, it needs to be turned over to Department of Capital and Asset Management and declared surplus before anything can happen to it. So our view is, let's get ahead of that. Let's be part of it. Let's not get caught by something that the state wants to do on that site. Let's actually be part of it and see if we can proactively influence the outcome. So any other comments or questions before we vote? Ally?
Motion to create the MCI Walpole Advisory Committee with membership and charge listed in the meeting packet.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you. Rich, I see you're back.
Yeah.
Any comments or questions?
I agree that the benches should come under management of some type. I think that any benches that I was involved with the entire last 2 years, I've always gone to the town hall or something to get approval before I did anything. And one of the things is that you can't, my thought was, you cannot charge $2,000 for just putting a plaque on a wooden bench when you're gonna charge was $2,500 for metal ones. And then I was told earlier, before this policy came out, that $2,500 was the cost of the metal benches plus the new pad was another $500. So I've been out pushing that, and I got one waiting for a plaque to come in now just to put on and that'll be going into the Russell Field, and we only have 2 left up there. And we went to Clark's Pond. We had an interested party there that was going to put 2 on there, and I went to the conservation, or talked to the town hall first, then went to conservation to see if we could make it 5. That way we can put 2 on each end in a V shape and 1 in the middle, and be all metal, the same type of bench. And I was going to charge $3,000, $500 a patches, and I was going to pay for the patches, the cement pads myself, and they got reimbursed as they got sold. So I think that $2,000 is too cheap, and I don't understand why we should make a profit type thing like that. And Clark's Pond profit was going to go to the Trails Committee. The downtown, the one I do the plaques at the wooden ones, they were going to the Keep Walpole Beautiful group for putting a plaque on, and you got $1,000 for that. I was able to get the benches all redone and all the same type of plaque on all of them, so that they look all the same, and that type of thing. And that's why, I think that $2,000 is too cheap. I really do, because I had people interested at the 3. And but that's just my 2 cents worth.
Well, I think it's great feedback. First of all, it's real life feedback, and I appreciate the fact that you're able to come here and explain that to us. So, do we actually say 2,000?
It's specific, it calls out, we can certainly modify that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think Rich makes a very good point. A lot of the reason that we do this is for fundraising purposes, and certainly that's what you've been involved with, Rich, and we appreciate that. So if you think 3,000 is a more reasonable figure to start with, then we can certainly
Well, I think
do that.
if you're just going to put the metal, the bench on, the pad's already there, $2,500 is fine. We didn't get in much argument from up at the ball fields. I didn't get any arguments for $1,000 for the wooden benches.
So why don't we, Jim, why don't you just take that as input and adjust the pricing schedule to
Sure.
be flexible enough to accommodate,
What if we removed, I'm sorry, you were going to
Yeah,
say.
so Rich is right. We used it as a fundraising tool. I know he did a great job doing fundraising up at the fields up there. Like you said, I think it was 2,500 or 3 or something around there. So just our costs are about 1,200 plus 200 for the plaque, plus call it 500 to pour the. So it's just under 2,000. For us to not make money, but to go towards and be able to do a little bit more with those funds for fundraising. 2,500 or 3, or we could even, we can modify it as we go.
I wonder, do you have to call out the fee in the policy?
I'd like to keep it
You like to
consistent,
keep
so
a
it's
number.
not like, oh,
It varies.
Pinnacle Point's only $1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you could come up with a
Yeah.
2,500 or 3,000.
Yeah.
And I guess we could make an exception. I mean, if somebody came and they wanted a dedicated bench and it didn't have $3,000 and it was, sort of, I mean, they could come to us and ask for an exception, right? I mean, it's a policy, we would have to break our policy, and that's always unfortunate. If somebody said, I can't afford $3,000, but I really want to memorialize this person who's lived in Walpole their whole life, or whatever. I feel like we could take that on a
I don't
case
think
by
we
case.
have to put that in the policy, though, so.
No, I'm
think
just pointing it
yeah,
out
Yeah,
as
no,
part
I
of the
think
discussion.
we'll have certain flexibility, but I think it's important to have a policy that we then follow.
Yeah, I
so,
think
yeah.
as a park commissioner, I think it would be under my discretion.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah, that makes sense. Sure.
Any other comments?
The only other thing, as we talk about fees, often I feel like we don't review them enough. And if Rich is saying the market right now is more than 2, I think we should listen, because
Yeah,
he
I do too.
certainly has done his fair share of work with benches in town for years. So I think we should adjust that, if that's, the feedback that we're hearing tonight.
I think you can change the price as things increase or whatever.
Yeah, like we do with everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, of course. Rich, thank you, appreciate
Thing
your
is, I've
input.
got a bunch of people that I've talked to, and it's given the $2,500 and $300, $500 for the pet, and there hasn't been any real arguments. Of course, I haven't sold one yet, but I was close.
Rich, thank you, and really appreciate all the good work you've done for the town. So Jim, why don't you figure out what a reasonable price should be
Yeah.
and put it in there, and we'll input, take Rich's input.
Sure.
As that.
So do you want to vote to adopt the policy with that?
Sure.
in there? Okay.
Ally?
Motion to approve the bench dedication policy and add to the select board policies and procedures, and then add,
Friendly amendment with, what do we say? Authorize the town administrator to determine the pricing schedule,
Yeah.
something like that. Does that make sense?
yes, as well as authorize the town administrator with the price schedule.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Rich, thank you. Okay, next, so we went back on that one. Okay, so now we're on number 3, discussion and vote to sign street betterment assessment order for Eastland Circle. Jim, you want to take us through that one?
Sure. You may recall that a few town meetings ago, town meeting voted to go forward with paving, finishing off Eastland Circle here. The applicant submitted a citizen's petition. All of them signed it. Jody and the Finance Department have been working with Town Council to finalize this assessment order now that the work's just about done. I've heard back from the residents who live in that street. They're really pleased with the work and the way it's come out. So we just need to go forward and formalize this. Jody's worked with Town Council to ensure that it's legal and everything's looks fine. So we're all set to go. Jody, did I miss anything?
By signing the assessment, that allows us to file the lien at the Registry of Deeds. And once that's done, which we're going to try and do tomorrow if you all sign, then we will send a letter to the homeowners advising them of what the cost was. They can either pay the whole thing up front with no interest within 30 days. If they choose not to, then it goes on their third quarter tax bill for the next 15 years.
So I assume that they're all aware of the costs, the assessment that are in Exhibit B?
The notification will advise them of that, yes.
So,
The letter that's going out tomorrow.
okay, but did they,
Oh, initially they were informed it was a lot more expensive than.
$185,000 was the
It was
original.
authorized and we came in a lot less and.
Right.
so we don't anticipate this will be a surprise to any of the 4 property
Absolutely
owners?
not.
No.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, okay. Any other questions on this? Ally?
Motion that, to pursue the vote under Article 32 of the May 1st, 2023 Annual Town Meeting, Chapter 433 on the town's bylaws and General Law 80 to assess roadways betterments for the improvement made to Eastland Circle, a private way to the owners abutting said way, and in the amount set forth in the betterment assessment order to execute and record said order and to certify said amounts to the Board of Assessors for the commitment to the tax collector.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
4-0. All right, thank you, Jody, appreciate it. Next, under new business number 4, Ben is going to give us a brief update on the middle school project. So Ben, let me turn it over to you.
Yes, all right. Thank you, Jim. So I'll try to keep it brief here. In the interest of updating on the school building committee's work over the past couple of months, obviously the building is open and the students are in there, and I've received rave reviews, not just from students, but from parents, teachers, and other staff. It's a beautiful building, a wonderful middle school to have. We're very fortunate to have it, and we're also very fortunate that the project came out in the way it did. I think it was a testament to a lot of people's work, not just the folks on the school building committee. Obviously, the contractor did an excellent job. The architects and the engineers put together a really excellent design, and Vertex, the owner's project manager, owner's project representative, also did a great job of coordination and communication, along with town hall and all the department heads, really, and the building commissioner's office. It was a huge group effort, so really kudos to everybody for that. And if you haven't seen it yet, then you really ought to make it down there, because it's something to see. The parking lot that's currently being constructed on the Old Bird School footprint should be complete by October 25th or around that week, which will allow the final bus pattern and drop-off and all of that to be finalized, which everyone's been dealing with a temporary situation that hasn't been ideal, but has worked. So hopefully by the end of October, that'll be final. And then working through the punch list with the architect and the building commissioners, the goal is to have the permit closed out and have the final certificate of occupancy by the end of the year. And there's no issues with that we foresee or that the contractor foresees. So that's a bonus. The issue that is really before the school building committee now at our meetings in October and November moving forward is the fact that the project has gone so well, and because of that we have some contingency funds that are remaining. We have a little bit over 4 million, I think it's 4.1, 4.2 million in contingencies that are not assigned yet. And so what we've been looking at, the school building committee has actually been talking about it for a couple of months now, what to use those funds for. Many of the options that we've been considering come from the value engineering process, which took place at the beginning of the project, and it resulted in many pieces of scope to the project being removed in order to bring the cost down. Since the project is now almost complete, we're able to bring some of those pieces of the project back in, and we've done so. And it's also allowed us to then consider other opportunities at that location, at the middle school location, for improving the area and putting that money towards the schools. Two of them that I'll mention briefly tonight. Excuse me. One is further improvements to the roadways and sidewalks surrounding the school, so on East Street and then also on Washington Street. It was always in the plan to do over the roads. Obviously, with heavy construction traffic, that would take a toll on the roads and they would need to be improved. Because of this additional contingency funds available, we're looking to expand that, improve the sidewalks, on Washington, all the way down to 27 to High Plain, and then also on East Street to High Plain, and then in the other direction as well. So there's a substantial amount of work. It's estimated about $1.7, $1.8 million to do that work. But we believe it's important, and we've heard a lot from the residents in the area, kids who bike or walk to school, that that's a priority for them safety-wise. And so being able to make those improvements is going to be a plus. And so the school building committee is going to look at that as one option for the contingency. The other larger option that's also about between 1.5 and 2 million is improvements to the fields that are adjacent to the middle school. Those fields, it's the varsity baseball field, the varsity softball field. The JVs use the other diamond as well. There's 2 soccer fields that are in between the baseball and softball fields. And all of those facilities really required a refresh. For anybody that spent any time down there, they're very, very old. It was in the capital budget, planning down the road to get to those, replace backstops, improve the dugouts, improve or replace, pitching mounds and batting cages and warm-up areas and seating areas, access for residents and access for people watching the games. All of those things that go into it. And we can accomplish that now with some of these contingency funds. It's something that the school administration brought forward as a reasonable use of those funds. And what it really allows us to do is kind of take that project, which would have been taking place somewhere between 3 and 15 years from now, and moving it forward. And we can utilize the contractor on site, thereby realizing some savings to the project as well, in overhead and equipment mobilizations and whatnot. So there's a lot of reasons to do that project now, rather than wait for the regular capital appropriations process. So those are 2 of the big decisions in front of the school building committee. Even if both of those projects are approved, there's still a little under $1 million in contingency that will remain for any sort of issues that may arise in punch list or any possible scenarios. So that's it.
Great update, Ben. Any questions or comments for Ben?
Thanks for the good news.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, Ben. Okay, that wraps the new business. Let's go to the consent agenda. Ally?
Motion to approve the consent items as listed in the October 8th agenda.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes of September 24th, 2024 as presented.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. 4-0. And on to the town administrator's update. Jim?
Sure. I know Bill and Katie were here to say a little thank you to everyone for their work, but Bill and Katie themselves did some great work, and Patrick and Joe Grant, I really want to call out them, all the volunteers that was there that day. Everyone did a great job. I know Bill called a lot of them out, but the volunteers, the participants in the parade, and everyone who stood by the sides of the road and watched, it was a great day, and I think they said a lot of nice things about it, but I wanted to call out those people and thank them. Last couple things, town meeting, we are all set to go for October 21st, Monday night. FinCom public hearings, the 17th, the Thursday before. They are all set to go. I think really the only thing on their agenda that night is the public hearing itself. Motions are all signed, sealed, delivered, approved by town council. Jim Brady has a copy of those. And last but not least, ribbon cutting ceremony for Walpole Middle School, Wednesday, October 30th at 4:30, right outside of the middle school. I know they're gonna have some desserts and coffee and everything. I know the state dignitaries, our delegation, people from the MSBA, they're all gonna be invited. Hopefully they'll attend. I think they will. And it's gonna be a nice day to take some people through that building, show it off a little bit. So,
Great.
yeah, that's it.
Good update. Thanks, Jim. Questions for Jim? Would reiterate the thanks to everybody on the 300th, Jim, and thank you for adding to the names. The list is long, and we always run the risk of leaving people off, but it's been a great year for the 300th events, and this parade was no exception. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
4-0. We're now adjourned. Thank you for tuning in tonight.
Thank you.
Patrick from Walpole Media, thank you, and good night, everyone.